Mr. Foulon, no intro music for this one. What do you think, buddy? Just a little bit of hold music, like like you're
Yeah, why
on an
not?
elevator on a Friday morning, making your way somewhere.
Or you're waiting for your coffee to be made.
I do have my espresso. I mean, I got to tell you, I missed it being having to travel all week and like being in DC, and you can't get good coffee in DC. That's almost impossible. At least where
Or
I
You,
was, there's no
you,
good
you
coffee.
got to come to my house. I have a nice espresso machine. So
I got a great
here,
espresso machine, multiple
uh,
ones, but I can't travel with them. That's my next invention, a travel espresso machine.
you buy
It's
it
not for
from
the faint of
Amazon and
heart.
return it.
Sir, we're revoking your Prime membership.
Yes. So here's a topic for you.
Shoot.
We've both been part of companies that start from scratch. How
Uh-huh.
the heck do you choose what framework you want to start with?
Ooh. So you're gonna start this conversation on frameworks already. Okay. So
Yes.
so I'll tell you this. I think first of all, it depends on your industry, right? So my last role, not the one I'm in today, not the one I'm in today. My previous role was in banking. It was a brand new bank in a fintech company, right? So I went away, went to the FSISAC, and I was like, what's their auditing framework for banks? What's the Texas Department of Banking's framework for auditing? And that's where I started, because I realized that I couldn't build my security program unless I understood what were the auditing and compliance requirements coming from my regulators. And then once I understood that, then at that point I started to form and go, all right, these are all, part of NIST. Some of these are, CIS. And then I was like, all right, how do we kind of build it out and go, all right, I've got my top line framework, which is the compliance framework, which I'm going to have to be compliant with in order to get my licensing.
Hmm.
Right? And I think a lot of times people go like, "Well, compliance isn't security." Yeah, you're right. Not security, but it's how you're gonna make money. And we sometimes forget that as security practitioners. What about you? What do you think?
I was thinking along the same way. So working with a new client, and one of the first things that I asked them are, What are the current frameworks that you have to be compliant to?" And then let's see how we can crosswalk that to potentially other cybersecurity frameworks, so that we could see where everything parallels and we don't need to do double effort. If, say, it requires verification of the customer and their data here, we want to make sure we have a solid data governance program that then carries along throughout the rest of the program, because you want to ensure from then on, once you capture that information, there's integrity in that customer record and it carries on. And just kind of similar examples, and picking those out, choosing those, and then that way you don't have double spend on compliance reviews versus security reviews. You can bring both teams together and talk through where the risks are, because the risk is the business risk. It is not just security risk. It is not
Right.
just compliance risk. It's risk for the whole business.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I think most people understand this now, right? Like, I think a lot of people understand this now, right? I have risk, and it's cyber risk equals business risk. If you don't believe me, go look up Johnson Controls and Clorox. You know, like what Clorox lost, what is it, $49 million is what they reported that they lost due to the ransomware attack on their manufacturing facility. Johnson Controls, I think, was 27 million. I may have that reversed. So
I saw an article on 23andMe that they lost 98% of their valuation based on all the breaches and lawsuits and everything that they've had.
they should lose 100% of their valuation because they're idiots. They're like, well, if our customers only had stronger passwords, then maybe this wouldn't have happened. You're like, apparently, you guys haven't done a tabletop exercise. You never blame your customer. One, it's your password policy that allowed them to set password 123 as a password.
Yep.
Easily set up a password policy that says it's got to be 14 characters. You got to have a capital letter, a small letter. You got to have multiple numbers. It can be anything like your username. It can contain any part of your username or date of birth. And that's how you kind of solve it. But instead, no, let's blame. Listen, I want to write a whole blog on how bad 23andMe was at what they do when they did what they did. Because I actually do think there's a lesson to be learned there. Here are all the things not to do. Blame your customers. Start with
I,
that.
I, well, even before you go back to that, you have to ensure that you have a good incident response situation, and your good incident response situation includes how do you communicate incident to the public when their data has been exposed, and blaming them shouldn't be on there.
That's like Equifax going and saying, it's everyone's fault we got hacked. Y'all shouldn't have given us your information to begin with.
You're a data broker. That's your business. That's how you make money.
Yeah, but
You
I'm just
we
comparing the
you
two.
stole all of our information. You literally buy our information
Information. Well, the government
from the
essentially, and then
government,
yeah,
from credit card companies, from everyone, and then you put yourself in the center of this ecosystem where you're the one saying whether banks should trust a certain individual or a certain company as to their creditworthiness based on all the information you collected on them. Uh, I think that's on you to protect.
yeah, agree. And 23andMe, it's on you to protect your customers, right? I mean, I'll tell you this: when I was in banking, and I spent a lot of time in financial services before I moved to my current role in critical infrastructure, and I can tell you that our threat intel team tracked a lot of customers' emails on the dark web. Like it wasn't just all right, internal emails, or we said, all right, who are our most valued customers based on impact, right? So someone that's got, $30 million in his checking account, that's a high value customer that if someone was able to hack his account or his credentials were being sold online to a 30 account with $30 million, the banks typically eat that loss, right? When someone does a fake ACH on your account for $800, you're going to get the money back most likely from your bank, depending on your bank. But I think 95% of banks today give you that money back. They go, that was fraud, and they write it off. They essentially file an insurance claim at the end of the year for part of that, and they get reimbursed for part of the losses they covered. So one of our things was, all right, if we have someone who has $30 million in their checking account, we're probably going to want to put his email in our threat intel list, right? We're going to want to know if someone is selling their passwords. And if they are, then we're going to reach out to that customer through our VIP banking service and reset their password and
Yeah.
let them know that they're going through something. And that proactive approach in banking saved us. I mean, it cost us less than six figures to manage, right? But it saved us millions of dollars because in the years prior to doing that, our high-end clientele, it was costing us as the bank, you know, millions of dollars because someone hacks their account, does $150,000 bank transfer. They wouldn't be any of the difference to it when you've got millions in your bank account. It's it's very different, and so yeah, and we did that for companies too, right? Like that was a piece of something we did for companies.
Yep. Yeah, the other thing for companies as you look at standing up your program, you want to stand up your program in a way that is it provides value to you, to your employees, and to the holistic environment that you're in. So if you're the larger company and you have smaller third-party companies that are integral to servicing you, hey, why not provide a little bit extra service to your critical vendors and go, hmm, we noticed that you might have some misconfigurations here that could potentially affect me. Let's work together and get these solved. little things like that where you're helping out your partners become more resilient makes you more resilient in the long run too.
Yeah, I think I, I'm going to push back on you there, and then I'll tell you why. Putting myself in either the vendor side of the house or the CISO side of the house, trying to monitor my own applications, trying to monitor my own internal stuff is several full-time jobs to begin with. Monitoring my third parties is traditionally, at least in most programs today, is done by the TPRM, the third party risk management team, which,
Hmm.
depending on the size of organization, may or may not report to the CISO. In most cases, they report to the chief risk officer or they report to the
Hmm.
COO, right? Or CFO. And so they're not looking at what they're monitoring. Go to any TPRM company, they're not monitoring cyber risk, they're monitoring financial risk. Oh, wait a minute, they're getting multiple class action lawsuits. This vendor is now becoming a financial threat to the organization. And they start internally to go, who are the backup vendors we could potentially start engaging with in the event this vendor has, any sort of service issues going forward. And speak to any TPRM. And for those who don't know that are watching or listening, TPRM, third party risk management, that's the acronym. They're looking more on financial worthiness than they are on cyber risk. And your third party cyber risk could be one person who wears a part-time hat on your vulnerability management team that's got, one of the third party security scorecard tools out there, like security scorecard or, something like that, risk recon, to name a few, right?
Hmm.
And they're looking at that and they go, well, these guys have a bunch of vulnerabilities. Well, then you've got your internal process. And this is where my pushback is. The process is security really most of the time is observing and notifying. It's not taking action. So what do? You find it, and let's say we've got a vendor who's got a problem. My team finds it. They go, who's the product owner of this product, right? So they go and they find out who the product owner is. It's someone else on a different team completely. It might be your first time speaking with them or second time. You don't always interact with them. Hey, we have a problem with your vendor. They present this risk. Here's a write up that we got. Can you shoot them an email, open a ticket, letting them know this is what we found, what's their plans to remediate, what's impact, blah, 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 blah. That takes weeks. And you're wearing a hoodie that says hacker on it. And I both know the moment there's a vulnerability within 24 hours, we know people are scanning for it.
And I don't think you should treat all of your third parties the same way.
Forget
'Cause
through. All right, and but
if it's one of your critical vendors, why not call up CISO to CISO? Hey, there's there's this activity. Our threat intelligence is noticing it. Our external scans notice that you have this vulnerability as well. We just wanted to make you aware of it because your security affects our security. And now, good.
reasonable disclosure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not saying to fix it, but if if say for example now they do ask you to fix it, now maybe you could talk about some way that you integrate better with the company, that you get a better deal with the company, that you find ways to work more cohesively with the company. Um, it's not not seen, but it's rare that companies will go this extent for their third party vendors.
Yeah, I've done that before where I've known the CISO of the vendor and I've reached out and said, we're recognizing a vulnerability and it's this vulnerability. And in most cases, they go great. And then legal will get involved on your end and say, write it in an email. Their legal will get involved and say, okay, acknowledge or don't acknowledge or ask for them to submit it in a different way. And risk gets involved and vulnerability management gets involved and developers get involved. And I'll be honest with you, how much do you trust your third party scanning tools to be accurate?
You, I don't think
Give me a percentage. Give me a percentage.
80%.
Wow, you're really confident. I'm at 42%. I 42% of the time I trust the information coming from a scanning tool, because in most cases they're scanning an old version of a product, or they're scanning something out there that may or may not be in the version I'm using, or may not be the application we're taking from that specific vendor. Because if you think of your critical vendors, they will typically have hundreds of applications,
Mhm.
and you're unable to tell your third party vendor scan only for this product or this application. It's scanning the entire IP domain that it can track online for that company.
Yep.
So my confidence level when I get a vulnerability is really, really low. And the process I've built, whether right or wrong, is go to our internal product owner, have them give them the write up, have them submit it to their counterpart so that it gets there. And then if we need to get a CISO on a call, we get a CISO on a call. Um, because I think time matters,
Yeah.
and you don't have, you get on a call with another security guy, you know, man, sometimes it takes you weeks to get a hold of someone because they're so busy.
Yeah.
So
And I don't think it'll happen for every vulnerability. I think you're
correct.
talking like high, um, actively exploiting type vulnerabilities that um, people's toothbrushes are DDoSing themselves for no reason. Sorry, I just had to throw in that little bit of news there where companies are now using toothbrushes as hops.
But you know that story was proven wrong by Kevin Beaumont.
Yeah.
Like, they misinterpreted the Fortinet, like, so that's what happens when you hire a Swiss reporter who misquotes a Fortinet employee. Because if you're okay, so I don't know who did the translation for that, by the way. I really don't, but they obviously didn't use Chat GPT. Because had they used Chat GPT for translation, you would have gotten the real translation of it. I went and I hunted down because I did it on the show yesterday, right? I actually wanted to hunt it down and actually see if it's true or not. And here's what I found. When you put it in Chat GPT and you do the German to English translation, what the Fortinet employee said is, for example, and he gave one example and then he gave the toothbrush example. And then someone somewhere translated that, or the guy who wrote the article in German decided to say toothbrushes were used as part of a DDoS attack. And you're like, that's not what happened. I mean, that's not what happened. But okay, that's great. Let's sow more fear in people, right? Because what we're doing is we're trying to tell people we live in the best time ever for humans. Technological advances, crazy, right? You've got planes can pretty much fly themselves most of the time nowadays, right? If you drive a Tesla, autopilot pretty much drives itself for the most part, right? Um, Unbelievable advances for producing food and everything else. And yet, we're trying to scare people away from technology rather than doing a responsible adaptability. Responsible adaptability says, why aren't there more routers at Best Buy or anywhere else that says, you're going to establish 3 networks here? Here's how you're going to do it. This is going to be a network for all your IoT interconnected devices, your fridge, your washing machine, your toothbrush, your Alexa, your so forth. You're going to hide this network. No one's going to see it but you when you program a device. For the rest of the time, it's sitting behind this firewall, sitting behind, this VPN connection, and it's managing that. This is your guest network for people who show up at your house and want to use your Wi-Fi, i.e., all the freeloaders that are your friends, your kids' friends
And your
or
neighbors.
family, and you're potentially. And then you've got your main network, the one that, because you work remotely, you work from home, this is your network. And for this network, you do all these different settings. And I mean, you can't tell me today, you know, that that's a hard sell. It's not a hard sell. It's a great product. And I think people would buy it, and I think companies would buy it for their employees.
I agree. I think that having more of that, even provided by infrastructure companies, cable companies, like they're now starting to have the two networks. Comcast adds in the third one where truly that should be your guest network, the X-Fi network for all of their customers. And they say that doesn't take away from your quota that they're now starting to put on you. But yeah, that should be the way it's done. That I think that the struggle is bringing the customer along the implementation journey to configure it in that best way, instead of, hey, this has three networks. I can't figure it out. I'll just put it all on the one that I know how I can make it work.
Yeah, you've got to have a step-by-step guide, right? I agree
Yeah.
with you. Well, we're almost at time, y'all. We did this for everyone watching and listening. This was kind of impromptu. Christophe and I were in DC. I was in DC this week. We met on Wednesday, I think, or Thursday, Wednesday. We're like, let's do something impromptu on Fridays. We were gonna call it two CISOs shooting the shit. I don't know if we're gonna stick to that name. You guys could vote on name, but for right now, it's just Christophe and James hanging out. And we'll probably do this again next week at 11 a.m. We're a little bit late today, but I think next week we'll make sure to be on time with all of y'all. But if you have questions, topics, just reach out to me or Christophe in DMs, and we'll gladly talk about whatever it is that's on top of your mind, and we'll share what's on top of ours as we wrap up a week on a Friday afternoon. And by the way, Christophe is in the free market. He's a free agent right now, and if you don't hire Christophe, then you ain't nothing.
See, that's a good recruiter right there.
That's I'm right. Where's Stu? Someone get me Stu from Hampton North on the line right now. Where is he? Stu, get Christophe a job today. If anyone can pull it off, it's you, Bubba. If anyone. And go Niners, Super Bowl weekend.
Of course, you can find us on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and all the things.
YouTube and everywhere else. Yeah.
Just not TikTok. We don't go there.
We're not giving the Chinese any free content.
No.
China, you want this content? You better open your pockets. I want money. Lots of money. And not yuan. I want US dollars.
Folks, have a great rest of your day.
Weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.